chances are you want to improve at Apex Legends if you're looking at this video. My credentials will be up on screen now, in the background, or in the foreground, whatever. There you go, they're my credentials. If you don't want to listen, that's perfectly fine. You know, you could go watch players a lot better than I, but my selling point is I'm an average player, so I can help you improve to an above average player at least. And it boils down to three things: game sense, game knowledge, and mechanics. If your mechanics are terrible, your game sense is good, you're alright. But, obviously improve your mechanics. If your game sense is terrible and your mechanics are good, that is a problem. Because you kind of need a good mix of all of them to be a good player. And I'm going to break them down into kind of more bite-sized, if you want a full breakdown. There isn't a game sense one yet, but there's, there's every area of mechanics broken down in their own videos, and there is fighting broken down. Obviously, I will make a video about game sense later on, but what it comes to, sorry, when you are trying to improve at Apex is those three things. First, you want better map knowledge, because better map knowledge allows you to take fights a lot smarter than you would otherwise. And a lot of the time, it is just, when you're running around the map, just take a mental note of some spots that you wouldn't really normally think of, right? In the house, I know that there's, you obviously have the stairs there, but around the corner here, you have this ladder. You drop down, boom. You can spray someone down here, or say someone's blocking you over here. You can climb up. If you can super glide, boom, that's perfect. You get here, and you spray them on the stairs. Because general map knowledge is going to help you win fights easier. Because if you know the area better than your opponent, you can take angles that they'd never even consider looking at, or guarding, sorry. And that is so important for overall fighting, because if you are not taking angles your opponent can't expect, you're going to take a lot more damage than you would if you took an angle they wouldn't know about. And that just comes down to, playing the game more and taking note of any interesting spots you think, oh, I wouldn't notice that if I was guarding this area or I was holding this position. And just general map knowledge will always be a good thing to have in any game, including Apex, including Thief, including even Fortnite. But alongside that, you need good mechanics. What do I mean by good mechanics? Yeah, basic movement, good aim, and, good idea of how to use your Legends abilities. Like, if you're using race abilities to just get movement clips, grand if you're being smart about it, but if you're just doing it and you're dying every game, don't ruin your game by wasting your abilities. Rafe's phase should really be used for, taking a position to finish off a fight, or escaping a bad position to reposition, because Rafe is an entry fragger legend, and that is so important to know, because if you're wasting away your legend abilities, like realistically, if you're dying as Rafe without doing damage or using your abilities, you shouldn't be playing Rafe, right? And every legend has a specific purpose, so you need to learn your main purpose and be able to fulfill that. And if your playstyle and your main purpose don't match up, like say you're playing defensive but you're playing Rafe, find a new main. Play Watson, armor of the room you're holding. Find a legend that suits your playstyle. Aim, very easy to practice. You can either learn your recoil control to be a really good mechanical player, or you can use recoil smoothing. Move faster than your guns, recoil, whatever. I've made a video explaining it. I'm not going to go into even more detail. Just go into my how to perfect your aim video, because that is going to give you everything you need. Second of all, good strafe. If you're going left, you're going to die. If you're going right, you're going to die, because your strafe is too predictable. Throw in a crouch, every once in a while. Half crouch, full crouch. Don't do it in the same point every time. Try and make your strafe different every time you strafe, because otherwise it's just too predictable. And if you're spam crouching, you're effectively just making more headshots for yourself, because a lot of the time your opponent's going to aim for your body. If you know you can hit all your shots in the head, aim for the head. But as you saw, I missed a lot more shots in the head there than I do when I'm aiming for the body. It's, high risk, high reward. You're going to miss more shots, but you're going to do more damage. So, you need to be able to aim mid-level, because that's where you're going to do the most damage and hit the most shots. Best trade-off. You do less damage if you hit every shot to the head, but you're going to hit more shots. And finally, aim. Don't be aiming with your crosshair. You might be thinking, what do you mean? I use a white crosshair because it kind of blends in with everything. The best way to explain it is look at the enemy through your crosshair. Just imagine the dot isn't there, because, you know, unless you're long range, you don't really need it. I'd try to think, right, the 2 lines on the ksgjag, because that's my favorite side, especially for SMGs, I try and make the enemy stay in between them, because that's where my shots are going to hit, rather than going, right, where's the dot? Now, at this range, yeah, I'll keep the dot on them. But that is just because of general experience. If you're fighting close range, look through the sides. You know, master your bad weapons too. If you have bad weapons, you're handicapping yourself at the start of games. Because Havoc used to be my worst weapon. You want to know what I did? I went into the firing range and I said, right, I'm not leaving until I know how to use this weapon good. And I know how to use it good now. Recoil smoothing. I also mastered the recoil pattern for situations where I can't really use recoil smoothing that well. And I will always look at a gun like that, and I will always look at a legend like that. I will go into the firing range and make sure I've mastered them if they were what is losing me games. And also, VOD review. Please, please VOD review. Because it is so important to your overall improvement, and if you are not VOD reviewing, you are losing out on so much improvement that you could be making so much faster. And finally, you'll notice I said game knowledge, and you might be like, what do you mean by that? Game knowledge is just knowing the small things in the game. Like when skynading, you look at the fingers. You kind of use the second finger, you know, the one extended the most, as your idea of where you're aiming. You use that and you line it up with whoever you want to hit, and boom, you know, it's going to arch perfectly. That's kind of your level of arch, the direction you're going. Now, if you want to do a proper skynade, you aim a bit further up. You kind of look right, look like this, tilt it forward, and boom, that's going to hit whoever. You know, a lot of it is just improving upon how you played before and knowing smaller things. You know, I know red evo is better than gold, but if I'm using gold, take advantage of the extra space. You know, carry more ammo and just general knowledge. Like if you know you're going to miss shots with a sniper, don't pick up a Kraber, or master the Kraber before you do so. And you know, just general knowledge of the game will allow you to predict stuff like, right, this Gibby, I'm going to be able to hit more shots on it, or whatever. Knowing smaller things that most people don't think to know. Obviously, you will need to gain that from overall playing, but generally just watching videos from like Burno, from Hell, and just looking at what they do. Because a lot of the times, pros are doing things you're not, and you can take them, implement them into your own gameplay, and do better. And a lot of game knowledge as well just tunes down to keeping in touch with the game, right? If you want to be good, you can't only be playing it. You need to be watching it too. Like, if I didn't watch people like Moki, I wouldn't know about fatigue wall bounces, and they are very essential to some endgames. I won games simply because of that knowledge that I would have lost prior. Because I could be using a PK, right? Last zone, someone's above me, right? Say they're up here on this ledge. Because I know what fatigue wall bounces are, I can do this. Sorry, I'm a bit rusty, so this might take a couple of tries. Boom. Boom. And I've won. And that is actual situations I've used. Just knowing small things about the game and how to apply them are always going to be so useful. Like with Wraith, if you run and you cancel their phases, you wall bounce, you get so much more distance. And it's just small things. You know, you should always be thinking outside of the box, because if you're doing something too predictable, you're losing games. I always know my legend that I'm playing to the best I can, and I'm always thinking, right, what would people not think of doing with this legend? You know, with Revenant, a lot of people wouldn't think to, you know, use his dash just straight down, and I discovered that before many people did. A lot of people would just go straight, and then, you know, it came out that if you look down, you get more forward momentum. I figured that out in the first 10 minutes, as did some people over on Reddit. And that is so important, because if you just think outside of the box, you're going to be able to hit clips people would never think of. And if you were going to try and be a clips player, you know, you could genuinely change your life by just thinking outside the box and, you know, posting a clip of something people didn't think of. You have people like a Raved who did that with Rampart, you know, specifically went for Rampart. And game knowledge includes just mastering your favorite legend. If you have a main, do everything you can to master him. Play the most unique way you can. As Wraith, a lot of people only use her tactical to run away, but I've used her tactical to push into places I normally wouldn't be able to. Say I'm fighting someone here, right? They're hiding behind that. I know they're cracked. I have, say, half shields. I'll use my phase to run around, I'll cancel it here, jump out, spray him, win the fight. General knowledge of the game is so good for you. And I know this video has been mostly in the firing range, but that is just the easiest way to explain everything. And, you know, a lot of this video was a lot easier to make because it was exclusively in the firing range. That is not something every video looks like, but either way, if you found anything from this video helpful or useful, I really would appreciate it if you consider liking, subscribing, and just commenting on the stuff you would like videos about. You know, P. Drizzy did it. You know, one of my favorite viewers, and one of my most, you know, most of my good videos ideas have come from things I struggle with, or I've seen people that I play with struggle with, or just viewers suggested ideas. So please do suggest anything you're struggling with, and I will make a video on it as soon as I possibly can. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.